Good morning and welcome to Reviving the Global Heart online practice. Joe Weston is not with us today. He is in Denver in a client workshop, and I am thrilled that this, on the United Nations International Day of Peace, that you are all here. And we have a guest who's not really a guest because he's very close to the Weston Network, Curtis Ogden, with us this morning. And Curtis, in addition to being a dear friend of mine, does very important work in the world. I have learned so much from him around what does it take to do deep collaboration. I actually met him on Twitter, as much as Twitter can annoy me on a daily basis. There are many gifts that Twitter has brought me, and one of them is Curtis Ogden. So we met virtually before we had a chance to meet in person about 2.5 years ago for the first time. I will put a link to Curtis's bio because we don't need to read a bio. But I do want to say that in addition to being, a student and a practitioner of collaboration for good, Curtis is also a healer and has so much wisdom and so much humility in that wisdom. And so, Curtis, welcome to Reviving the Global Heart. And what's on your heart that you would like to share today?
Wow, well, thank you. I so appreciate the invitation, dear friends, and to see other friends, Cindy and others who have had a chance to meet more recently. I'm definitely humbled by the invitation and grateful for it. And I like to begin any kind of presentation or talk, as short as this one will be, with the acknowledgement of all the unearned privilege that I carry, given my intersecting identities as a white, straight, cisgendered man, formally educated, mostly able-bodied, and generally in my right mind, though it depends on the day. So that when I say yes to an occasion like this, it really is in the name of leveraging my privilege for peace, a more peaceful and a more just world. I also want to acknowledge at the outset, thank you for sharing the bio. I want to also just say that while I'm here as me, I'm really here as a we, which is many different communities, this community that I get a chance to learn from, as well as the people at the Interaction Institute for Social Change. So I put a link to that community and the many beautiful people that I get to work with and learn from. And so anything that I share today that counts as wisdom certainly is community generated. With that, I wanted to go ahead and share my screen and just show you this image. So today, as you know, is International Day of Peace, anointed by the United Nations 40 years ago. And this is an image of the Peace Bell that was donated by, as it says, the United Nations Association of Japan. They gave that in 1954, and it's become a tradition to ring this bell twice a year. The first time they do it is the first day of spring, which clearly we're past, and at the vernal equinox, which is today, the 21st of September, to celebrate the International Day of Peace. So without further ado, I'm going to ring a bell once, and I hopefully will remember to ring it a second time when I'm done sharing. So each year, this Day of Peace is observed around the world, and it is on this day, the 21st of September, It was established, as I said, in 1981 by the United Nations General Assembly. And then 2 decades later, in 2001, the same General Assembly voted to designate the day as a period of nonviolence and ceasefire, and to strengthen the ideals of peace. The theme of this year's International Day of Peace is recovering better for an equitable and sustainable world, with this accompanying invitation to stand up against acts of hate online and offline, to spread compassion, kindness, and hope, all in the face of what is the lingering global pandemic. And hopefully, as we recover and, as we're saying now in the United States, build back better. So all of this is really near and dear to my heart and the hearts of my colleagues. And I know that it's dear to many in this community of practice. And in fact, I've been constantly thinking about the first respectful confrontation workshop that I took, which was in March of 2020 in New York City, just before everything started shutting down. I'm so grateful that I got to do it in person before that happened, because all of the embodied practices that Joe teaches us, to me, seem just so central to the work for peace and justice. And I am appreciative of the fact that this year's Day of Practice specifically calls out equity in its theme. Some of you know that my day job with the Interaction Institute for Social Change has me and my colleagues working with leaders and organizations and networks to advance justice and sustainability, and with a very specific focus on racial equity and racial justice. And while we don't explicitly name peace in our work, that is definitely a core goal. And it's our belief, as taught by many teachers, including many in this community, living and past and through experience, that peace without justice and justice without peace are not recipes for long-term peace or justice. My sense is that this is becoming clearer to many of us through COVID, which has hit underprivileged and marginalized groups and segments of society the hardest. And it's also further exposed some of the toxic parts of the foundation of this country and many westernized countries, including colonialism, genocide, supremacy, racism, and patriarchy. I'm reminded by Isabel Wilkerson, who's the author of the book Caste, which we reference a lot in our racial justice work, that to do peace building on top of a toxic foundation, she refers to the United States as an old house built on this toxic foundation. And if you're trying to do peace building on that, you're just furthering harm, because the hurt and wounds remain deeply buried in the basement, in the foundation. And while our minds may tell us one story, our hearts and our bodies know the truth. And so for me and my colleagues, it's that lingering legacy of trauma that we have to name by shining a light on it, and really liberating ourselves to be able to work for true peace. And that, to me, is where these somatic practices of respectful confrontation become so key and so central. As Joe would say, to allow sensations to flow, let emotions to flow, and to let truth and honesty flow, so that ultimately, as the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. once said, justice rolls down like waters and righteousness like a mighty stream. For me, it's then it's at that point that in community, not individually, but really in community and in diverse communities, we can begin the deeper work of anti-racism, decentering whiteness, pushing back on patriarchy, and decolonizing our mainstream institutions and practices. And I've also been thinking about how attempting to do peace building on the foundation of a global economy that attempts to subjugate nature is really a losing proposition. And clearly the fires and the floods of recent months are speaking to us pretty loudly about that truth. And of course, while we share globally this planetary home, we know that climate impacts are not evenly distributed, and they play out along lines of race, of economic class, of gender, and other dimensions of difference. So peace and justice, justice and peace are also central to this work of environmental sustainability. In fact, a colleague of mine, Dr. Sally J. Gerner, pointed me in the direction of a recent study that asked experts to rank the importance of these 17 so-called Sustainable Development Goals, the SDGs, and found that there's a strong emphasis on social and economic justice. So you can't have sustainability without justice, and you can't have justice without sustainability. But again, the planet is telling us we need to adopt a different stance, to remember, to make peace with, and to embrace our interrelatedness and interdependency with all of life. So here again, I find the practices of respectful confrontation just core and essential. It's a call to confront ourselves, as Joe would remind us, and to do so respectfully, to reground, to ground ourselves and reground, and reconnect with Mother Earth, to work for more balance and presence and flow with her. And as Joe is now telling us, we may be working to bring more fierce civility to communities, I think we need to remember that civility includes embracing our essential wildness, which connects us to the greater intelligence of life. So I'm just going to end with this quick reading of a poem by Wendell Berry and then be done. And some of you may know this, the poet, the environmental activist, the racial justice activist and farmer Wendell Berry, who's in Kentucky in the United States, wrote, "When despair for the world grows in me, and I wake in the night at the least sound in fear of what my life and my children's lives may be, I go and I lie down where the wood drake rests in his beauty on the water, and the great heron feeds. I come into the peace of wild things who do not tax their lives with forethought of grief. I come into the presence of still water, and I feel above me the day-blind stars waiting with their light. For a time, I rest in the grace of the world and am free." So I'll end by holding out this question that I sit with pretty much every day. How can we embrace and move forward with rage and with joy, with civility and with wildness, with peace and with justice?
Mm. Mm.
Thank you, Curtis.
Mm. Thank you, Curtis.
Thank you.
Mm.
So I'm feeling like we have started our practice, and let's move into the rest of it before we have a discussion. Hopefully people have some responses they can hold to what Curtis shared that we can go back to after our practice. So as Ophelia is already doing, finding a way to sit where your spine is relatively straight, perhaps on the edge of your chair, a way in which your body can feel aligned but relaxed. And if you're comfortable, close your eyes and then make contact with this peaceful, wild planet beneath us that's all around us. Find your contact points, maybe where your rear is touching a chair or a cushion, your feet are on the ground, perhaps the back of your thighs against the chair. All of this connected to the earth, peaceful, wild earth. Now I invite you to find your core or your center. 3 fingers below your belly button, a third of the way into your body. This place of awareness is so key in this practice, that we come from this place and later from our heart, not from our powerful heads, which get enough attention. And if it doesn't quite make sense, that's okay, just try it. To actually place our focus from our center. So from your center, becoming aware of your physical body. Sensations, perhaps your heartbeat, the rhythms of the body that are connected to this wild and peaceful earth. From your center, becoming aware of your emotions, not needing to name them or categorize them as good or bad, just noticing, making room for them. All emotions are welcome. From your center, becoming aware of your thoughts without judgment, not necessarily what you're thinking, but the texture, the rhythm too of your thoughts. Now, with the greater awareness of your physical, emotional, and mental self, let's take a deep breath in through our nose, out through our mouth. From your center, becoming aware of your heart, the energetic place in the middle of your chest, that too has the capacity for peace and wildness. And experimenting, if you can, have your awareness both be in your center and from your heart. From your center and your heart, becoming aware of something larger than yourself. Perhaps you don't even need to name what is larger than yourself. Just becoming aware of a force greater or larger than yourself. Now, with a greater awareness of yourself, let's take another breath in through your nose, out through your mouth. From your center and from your heart, becoming aware of your surroundings. The space around you, the things, the energy, the beings, the objects. Just bringing yourself into a context that is connected both to the physical matter and the energetic presence of this wild and peaceful earth. Your surroundings in front of you, behind you, to the sides, above and below. Now, with a greater awareness of yourself and your surroundings, take a deep breath in through your nose and out through your mouth. From your center and from your heart, becoming aware of all beings on this planet. The human beings, the plant beings, the fungal beings, the other beings which count in the trillions, becoming aware of the presence of life itself. All in this context on this peaceful and wild earth. Now from your center and from your heart, becoming aware of just a set of human beings. And let's start with the people in this practice. 14 of us scattered in different places, all in the same context, connected in time and connected beyond time. As we share this practice together. Now from your center and from your heart, becoming connected to all human beings beyond just the ones on this call, and starting with another subset of those you would call loved ones. Perhaps they are individuals who come into your awareness, or perhaps you more just feel the presence of that love that comes from other people. Now from your center and from your heart, becoming aware of those human beings you would call strangers. Those who have not crossed the threshold into loved ones, but acknowledging the many other humans who share this context on this wild and peaceful earth. Now from your center and from your heart, becoming aware of those human beings you would call adversaries. Perhaps there are faces or names. Perhaps you just feel that energy. Now, with a greater awareness of yourself, your surroundings, all beings, and the human beings included, let's take a deep breath in through your nose and out through your mouth. And as we move into the close of this practice, letting this awareness and the feelings and the thoughts and the sensations and that which you notice to all be there without judgment. And taking these many connections back into your heart and back into your center. We'll close this practice with one final breath in through your nose, out through your mouth. Slowly open your eyes. Stretch your body and shake it, whatever you need to do to come back into this present moment, connected to each other on Zoom. So, as Joe would say, we've had a motivation. Beautifully spoken by Curtis. We've had our practice. This is our time for discussion, anything that came up in the practice or what during or after what Curtis has shared that you would like to share with the group.
Curtis, hello. I need to believe. And I like to ask you for what would be a word that will encourage us that have been fighting or advocating for diversity for so many years, so many efforts, always trying again. Always the results were very modest. And we keep trying. We don't give up. We keep trying. But I wonder if we can rejuvenate the faith or the belief that change is coming. And I hear you saying things that I believe deeply. They are truth, but the implementation is what eludes me.
Thank you.
You're muted. Oh, no, you're not.
No, I'm not. No, I'm not. Well, I wouldn't.
No, you're not.
I wouldn't deny how daunting the work is and how long it's been and probably will continue to be. I would say that one thing we're doing in our community is to remember the joy in the struggle, and also and to practice accordingly. And also to look for the good, because there's so much out there. Of course, if we tune into the news, I just don't. I don't, because it's really manufactured to be clickbait and manufacture outrage, which doesn't mean there aren't horrible things out there, but there's so many points of progress, so many. And for those I know, Black American friends who've been at this for a long time, I mean, the conversation has changed. Many more people are in the struggle. We're seeing it reflected in media in terms of whose stories are told, in terms of diversity. We are not where we were even 2 years ago, pre-George Floyd. We can't rest, but we should restore ourselves every now and then. So I think, we've got the light and the darkness in us as human beings, and I guess they're there for a reason. So holding on to that complexity is one definition a mentor of mine uses for love.
Thank you, Ophelia.
I'll just say this. I was so moved by so much of what you said, Curtis, and I was just so struck by what appeared to me to be the ease with which you brought all of those concepts together, and a bit of envy that you're so surrounded by all of that all day. And I'm so grateful to just hear all of it at once. And I was really struck, especially by your introduction in the power of the humility, and the juxtaposition of how much confidence it takes to be humble like that. And I've been, over the last year, I think the theme, certainly in my practice, is the awareness of the seeming contrast and also the power in knowing that human beings are simultaneously fragile and resilient. And that just came up for me a lot as you were speaking, and really appreciate the opportunity to share that awareness with you in this community and how clearly you articulated that. It's really great to share space with you again, even virtually. Thank you.
Much love, Cindy. Great to see you. Thank you.
I'm struck this morning by the synchronicity. I was just reading journal entries from the last year, 2 years about being feral and wildness. And I loved, I didn't write down exactly how you said it, Curtis, but it's something about, here's what I heard. A connection to my own wildness connects me to the wildness of all of nature and all of the world. And it's a particularly delicious call to intimacy through wildness. And so I'm grateful for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom.
I was I really appreciated what CJ shared. A lot of what you shared, CJ, resonated with me, especially the piece around, Curtis, your introduction, and that I don't know if disclaimer is the choice word for it, but acknowledging your privilege out front. I've never witnessed that. I've never witnessed someone beginning an interaction that way and speaking from that place. And I was it really stood out to me how peaceful that felt, and how it was just different than anything I've experienced. And for me, it seemed to really change the space in which I was able to receive what followed. And I felt very safe, and it was just my first time experiencing something like that. And it was, I really appreciated that. Along with everything else you said as well was very moving, but that piece especially stood out to me.
Thank you, Patty. But what jumped out to me in your introduction, Curtis, was this felt connection between diversity and wildness. Not that diversity is wild, but in a way it is that which is different than what we are used to feels wild. But my morning walks with the dog, which this morning I went through the dunes and along the lake, and part of that is through a hemlock forest. And it was the storms were brewing this morning, and so the winds were gusting at like 30 miles an hour, and there was sand blowing, and there was all this life, so much movement with the dune grass, with the trees, and that somehow it's comforting to be in the presence of wildness and to feel safe in that wildness is comforting. And it's both rejuvenating, like it's like, oh, this is unpredictable. I don't know what's going to happen next. And the nature doesn't even need to be that dramatic to show off its diversity. Sometimes it's in incredible subtlety. So I felt those connections with your beautiful sharing. Thank you.
Curtis, you mentioned the book Cast, which of course is excellent. Are there any other books that you would recommend?
Oh my goodness, yes.
Big question.
Yeah, it's a big question. I'll tell you that I'm running this what's called a Network Leadership Institute for food justice advocates in our region in so-called New England. And Sherry Mitchell's book, Sacred Instructions, I feel like is just essential reading if you don't know it. She is in what is now called Maine. She has a wonderful website. So I feel like that has been such both a great challenge and also a rejuvenating well. So just putting that in the chat. You know, any of Ibram Kendi's work, I feel like is great. And I've said this to Joe, but Resmaa Menakem, who's based in Minneapolis, who wrote My Grandmother's Hands, talks about the deep embodiment work that needs to be done by everyone, essentially, to address, you know, ancestral traumas, which it's fabulous. And they actually have an online free course you can do called Cultural Somatics, which is something I've been through. Those are some. There's so many.
Thank
other,
you.
Yeah.
Yeah, Curtis is a very deep well of resources. I encourage everyone to check out his writings too. He puts a lot of heart and thought into what's published on the ISC blog and elsewhere. And a book called Sacred Instructions, I have not read, but I've heard wonderful things about. That sounds like it's right up your alley, Randy. A book called Sacred Instructions. We have time for one more comment before our dedication. Anybody really feel drawn to share?
You mentioned that you're in New England. Where are you located?
I'm based on what are historic Nonotuck lands, otherwise now known as Amherst, Massachusetts, though I wonder how long we'll have that name, given the legacy of what Amherst did to the indigenous peoples. But yes, Amherst, Massachusetts is where I am.
Okay, thank you.
So Joe will be back with us next week. It really pained him to not be here today on the United Nations International Day of Peace, which is, it's an important day for the planet, and it's an important day for Joe. Last year, he did a heart walk on this day. And I am going to need to slip out the back door because I have to be prepared for something at noon. Shelley is going to lead us in a dedication. Thank you, Curtis. Thank you, everyone else, and I will see you next week.
Thank you, Todd. Oh, Curtis Ogden, you're the best. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So if we can all allow our eyes to fall closed and feel in our hearts and in our core and in our entire breathing body, beautiful, peaceful, fierce messages that Curtis offered today, and to celebrate the diversity, the multiplicity, and the deep wisdom that so many peoples have at this moment in time. to take in and to resonate with in our beings, and to notice and to respect that we as human beings are but part of this living, breathing, evolving, gorgeous reality, and that our home, planet Earth, she provides for us so, so generously. And may we bless her and appreciate her by being and doing all that we can to honor, respect, and fortify what is beneath our feet always, and to be kind, to be generous, to be fierce, and to be deeply respectful of each being on this planet, and to hold one another as each one of us fiercely restores ourselves so that we may remain resilient. Thank you, thank you, thank you to each heart on this call, and may we all just spread our goodness. Thank you for being here today. And thank you, Curtis, so much. So grateful. Have an awesome week, and we will see you all next week.
Thank you, Shelley.
Thank you, Shelley.
Absolutely.
Goodbye,
you all.
everybody. Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks, Curtis.
Thank
Nice
you.
meeting you.
Nice to meet you.
Oh, what a delight.
Thanks, Shelley.
Curtis, you're the best. Oh, I cannot wait to hear the recording because I was in and out on the internet on the beginning. So I missed parts and I was like, oh, so Todd's going to send me the recording, and thank you.
You're welcome. All right. Be
Take
well.
good care of yourself. I'll
Yep.
see you soon. Thanks. Bye-bye.